Crimean Tatars or Kirimli. Who are they? What are they known for? What have they given to the world? And how did they change history? Watch the video blog, Moments of History, Personalities, to find out. 135 years ago, on April 15, 1888, Ayshe Iskhakova was born. This lady was one of those who broke the stereotypes about the image of Crimean Tatars in the early 20th century. She can be safely called one of the brightest and most emancipated young ladies not only in Crimea or Ukraine, but in Europe as a whole. She was an educator, ethnographer, public and political figure, and the head of the Crimean Tatar women's movement since 1917. However, her name is still little known in society. The idea of women's emancipation has been actively supported in Crimea since the late 19th century. The example is the newspaper called Turgeman. From issue to issue, its founder Ismail Gasprinsky and his followers promoted gender policy. They secured for Crimean Tatar women the right to vote in elections, hold leadership positions, and openly express their views. They gave women the opportunity to decide their own fate. Today, all historians recognize that it was in Crimea that the revolutionary circumstances showed the level of involvement of Crimean Tatar women in social and political life. Unfortunately, there is not much biographical information about Ayshe Iskhakova. However, her political and social activities left a deep mark on the history of Crimea. Already in April 1917, she, along with Ayshe Bodaninska, Ilimay Tokhtar, Dilara Bulgakova, Hadidz Avsi, Zeynep Amirkhan, and many others, took part in a women's rally in Bakizere, which elected a city women's committee led by Shafika Gasprinska. They were supported by Domem Krymskim, who was then the Mufti of Crimea and the head of the Muslim Executive Committee. The latter stated that he was taking the women's movement under his care, and the Executive Committee was ready to finance their work. In the summer, Ayshe Iskhakova herself was elected head of the Central Muslim Women's Committee. The memoirs of her close friend Ayshe Bodaninska have been preserved, and she wrote that Ayshe Khanum was a beautiful blonde woman who always dressed in a modern and tasteful way. In September 1917, by the initiative of the Ukrainian Central Rada, the Congress of Enslaved Peoples was held in Kiev, and Ayshe Iskhakova took part in it as a member of the Muslim Executive Committee, along with Zafer Seydemet, Ahmet Ozenbashli, and Noman Kelabidzikin. Later, Zafer Seydemet wrote that the delegates of the Congress remembered Ayshe Iskhakova's speech the most. Her appearance on the tribune in national clothes, her high oratorial skills, and her emotional speech about the Tsarist policy toward oppressed peoples made an extraordinary impression on the participants of the Congress. The audience gave her a standing ovation. In general, Seydemet wrote about Ayshe Khanum as a leader who could captivate and lead people. In the same year, 1917, the Crimean press wrote about the opening of a women's proto-gymnasium, or secondary school, in Simferopol under the leadership of Ayshe Iskhakova. In the 1920s, Ayshe Khanum worked as a researcher at the Tatar Ethnography Department in the Central Simferopol Museum of Taurida under the direction of Crimean scholar Ernst. And in 1926 she became the head of the same department. In fact, her contribution to the museum's collection is invaluable. She collected, studied, and systematized unique items of applied art, interior design, and traditional Crimean Tatar costumes. From 1927, she worked under the direction of Yuzian Bodanisky and Osman Akokrakli at the Taurida Society of History, Archaeology, and Ethnography and became known as an author of scientific works in the field of Tatar studies. However, in 1928, Ayshe Iskhakova was dismissed from the museum and the ethnographic department was closed. And, unfortunately, her fate is unknown since then. One can only guess at the reasons for her dismissal during the troubled years for the Crimean Tatars. But there is also no information about repressions against her. Some researchers assume that Ayshe Iskhakova was deported, and her traces are then lost. But this is only an assumption. And we do not know what really happened to her. Follow us on all social media pages of the Crimean House, subscribe and support us with your likes.